Hello and you're very welcome to the JMAC Podcast. I'm John Mann. Of course, the podcast is brought to you by yourgretch.com. Use my promo code JMAC Podcast to get 15% off on the website. On site, I'm joined by Johnny Murtagh, Matthew Hurley, Kevin McGarty, and Michael McGullen to talk about last weekend's All-Ireland quarterfinals and go into in-depth detail with them and have a good discussion with them. So really look forward to chatting to the lads tonight. I will start off with your good self, Kevin. How are you?
Did you ask me there, John? Sorry.
Yes, Kevin.
Sorry, I zoomed out there for a minute. I'm all good. I suppose I'm the only neutral one this week among the three lads. They all had an interest in Croke Park last weekend, so I'm all good. I'm even better that my partner's father's really ripping at the minute because he's a big England cricket supporter. He's been at Lord's all week and he's calling the Aussies cheats. So I was weighing him up for the last couple of hours. But no, I have to say I was a wee bit disappointed in the weekend we had. It really, when we looked at it last weekend, there was 4 good games possibly could have been offered, and I was just disappointed in it, if I'm honest with you, in terms of the quality. Yes, one game was exciting. The other 3 we really could summarise in less than a sentence, really, with the Dublin game, first 5 minutes after half time, with the Kerry game, the first 10 minutes after half time, and I suppose in the Derry game, it was that 40 seconds that was ultimately the difference between the two teams. So, disappointing, but we move on now, and be really interesting to hear the lads' thoughts on particularly Dublin and Kerry and the way they went about their operation this weekend.
Yeah, nicely said, Kevin. Johnny Murtagh.
Yeah, well, look, John, there's no doubt about it. I've often been better. It was, I suppose, the weekend. I feel a wee bit like Kevin. I think it was an anti-climax, not just obviously because we didn't get the result. But I think across the board, I don't think it lived up to the billing that it was meant to be. I think 1 week, the week before, they're all singing from the one hint sheet, and the media was saying about the great success there has been because we had a couple of decent games. I think across the board, it's been flat. It's been proven this weekend that it's maybe a few too many games, and the quality wasn't in it for a lot of it. And like Kevin, I'll be interested to hear the rest of the lads, what they think. But I definitely know I go into a wee bit more depth later on, but I think from the Armagh point of view, it was absolutely deplorable, is the word I would use.
Looking forward to getting into it later on, my man. Mr. Hurley, how are you?
Yeah, all good, John. The results yesterday was disappointing for Cork, to be honest with you. But look, Cork have had a good season. I wouldn't be... Well, I know Johnny was disappointed about Armagh's performance on Saturday because there was a realistic opportunity for Armagh to get to a semi-final, especially playing Monaghan. But for Cork, you just have to hold your hand up. Derry are just a better team than us at the moment. And John Kerry is building a team and hopefully will go up to Division 1 next year. That's probably the Cork team's aim. I suppose the downer of the weekend was Kerry's win over Tyrone. It pains me to say it, but that was a brilliant performance by Kerry, especially in the second half. They tore Tyrone to a shred. But I'd agree with Kevin. That wasn't a good weekend of football. Kerry Tyrone, it died really in the second half. Mayo Dublin the same. The 2 other games, Armagh Monaghan, up until the penalties, it was very, very poor quality. And Cork and Derry, I know I was a Cork fan on the day up in the Nally stand or the Nally Terrace, but geez, it was the most boring game you could ever watch. Like, I really want my tickets back after that, to be honest with you. Not just because the Cork players put everything into it, but it was just the game was very, very poor, and you nearly would be, you'd be forgiven for falling asleep during it. But look, interested to hear what the lads think about Kerry and Dublin, particularly in the semi-finals, and maybe about Derry as well, because they could be a dark horse coming into the Kerry game. Kerry coming in after a brilliant performance, but I think Derry, they're waiting in the long grass, and they could shock Kerry yet.
Absolutely, Mr. Mullen, how are you? We cannot hear you, sir. Still can't hear you. You might have to come on and off. Yeah.
Brought my earpieces.
Yeah, we'll get Mr. McMullen's thoughts now in a few minutes. But good to hear everyone's good form, lads. And that is a big part of life. We will take care of a bit of housekeeping before we get into the action. The GA Derry football team of the week over the weekend was Rory Beckett in between the six, a full back line of Conor McCluskey, Jason Foley, and Aidan Forker, a half back line of Garrett McKinless, Tyg Morley, and Conor McCarthy. Then midfield of Jeremy O'Connor and the timeless James McCarthy, and then a half forward line of Gary Mohan, Sean O'Shea, and Cormac Costello, and then a full forward line of Colin Pasquale, David Clifford, and Conor McManus. And the GA Derry Footballer of the Week nominees have not been announced yet, so I think there's a bit of work to do in that regard. Kevy, any thoughts on the team of the week?
Just one. Micheál Brannigan thought played really well at times yesterday for Monaghan. Conor McCarthy, he's not in there either. I thought he contributed quite well. So just them two, just off the top of my head. So that's my only thoughts. Don't know what the lads think.
Johnny, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm very surprised Conor McManus made the bill. Probably just because of the legendary status and probably what he done when he came on and kicked 2 good penalties, absolutely dingers penalties. But I think to put him on the team of the week now is a bit of a stretch. No, Conor McCarthy, excellent. I thought Micheál Brannigan did well at times, Kevin, but he had a couple of bad whites as well in the first half that normally he would slog over or something about him. But he did well at the penalties as well. So, yeah, I think maybe Conor McCarthy and Micheál Brannigan be further up the line than McManus.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Kevin. Brannigan had a great game. And Mr. Hurley, what about yourself?
Yeah, no complaints really about the team. Like Brannigan's a good choice as well. To go into that forward line. Manus, like after he drove Monaghan back into the game really and got them level. He gained that equalising point to get to a penalty shootout. I think he deserved it the week just for that point alone. It's important getting that point and to come on the pitch as a 36-year-old. It's incredible and fair play to McManus for that. A local Kerry on it. Can't really complain. Foley, Morley, outstanding. Foley was nearly man of the match here today against Tony, superb at turning the ball over. I would have thought defenders actually. Riley, I thought had a very good game on the back from Monaghan, so maybe he could feel hard on doing that. But then, overall, go to Team Louis this week.
Super stuff. Mr. McMullen, we lost you. How are you?
I am back in business here. I think you're talking about Team of the Week, lads. I didn't see it, but the best player I saw all weekend was James McCarthy.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to agree there. The timeless James McCarthy is right, Mal. And then I suppose we'll crack into the action that took place on Saturday, lads, in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship quarter-final in Croke Park. It was Monaghan 14 points, Armagh 14 points after extra time, and then Monaghan won 9-8 on penalties, something we really need to start getting used to. Johnny Murtagh, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, well, like I said just in the intro there, that I think the best way to describe it was deplorable from an Armagh perspective. I haven't said much the last few days. I wanted to watch the game back and to really let the dust settle, I suppose, John, and see where it was at and talk to a couple of reliable people. And I would actually go as far as to say, and this isn't a stretch, this is a fact, that I think in my lifetime, that has been Armagh's biggest defeat in my lifetime. That's where I'm at with this. That I knew from the team, right, it says, right, it's going to be defensive. And then just before the game, Joe McIlroy's in, Torbert's out, and then it's even more defensive. You know, and I thought we played into Monaghan's hands. I thought that we invited them on. Like, Monaghan was going 3 weeks from the spin. What we need to do there was to go right after them, put them to the pin of the collar, make it a war of attrition to see who's going up the legs to see the game out. With our man with the extra. We never done that. We played into their hands, and it's one team that another team you don't want to get into an arm wrestle with Monaghan. You don't want to get into an arm wrestle because they have that upstairs. They have the tournament managers that can come in and get frees at key times in the game and kick them over the bar. And I go further into. A few years ago, we played Monaghan in a home dinner of a game in a scorching hot day in the Marshes in Italy. And it was a home dinner, home scoring game, load of scores. And coming near the end of the game, Conor McManus fought the free and put it over the bar and second arm out. And we haven't learned them lessons. When Rory Grugan was left 1-on-1 with McManus, that was a total mismatch. That should never have happened. For one, Grugan shouldn't have been McManus. And two, Began should not have got the chance to go short. Everybody had the man up. If you have to grab your man and they don't get a short ball, get them into going long. And just lads, I was talking about the missed opportunities that Gregory McCabe would probably pop to him, would bring it inside for a goal. He drops the ball. Rory Grugan taking too much out of the ball, without putting the ball over the bar. There was all these opportunities in the first half that we should have won maybe 4 or 5 points out, and we didn't. You know, and we missed goal after score. Ball handling that pass that turned over. Brooke got on and turned over. Brooke out to the wings, then had to turn back. Next thing, the ball ends up with Rafferty. Like, you know, it was deplorable. That's exactly what it was, deplorable. And you know, this is another dog fight that we've come into, and we've come out the wrong side of it. And we can talk about penalties all we want. It doesn't matter. He didn't have a goal. Monaghan was down to 14 men for the 8, I think 7 minutes of the extra time, and we just let them have the ball and run the clock down. Mental stuff. Mental. You can't be afraid of losing the game. You have to fucking go and win it. And we didn't do that. We didn't want to win it. We didn't want to win it enough. We were too afraid of losing the game. And Monaghan was the same. They set up like that as well. They were afraid of losing it too. And I think the next day, it's going to be lambs to the slaughter. That's what I think, straight off the bat.
Oh, very, very honest, Johnny boy. Very, very honest. And I suppose that's where your kind of mindset on it is. And I suppose the commentary coming from the game, both teams look like they're afraid to kind of push themselves on. And like, were you surprised by our match tactics throughout, Johnny?
I was very surprised. Like, we never, you know, Rain had a mediocre game by his standards. He kicked some unbelievable scores, but mediocre. He was in and out. He didn't look like he was enjoying himself. He got himself in. Like I said, he got himself up enough time for a goal chance. Couldn't get him the ball. You know, I just thought that, like, we were meant to nullify the wing half backs from Monaghan. McCarthy still, I would have had him on the team this week. Still was dangerous. Still causing a bother. You know, key matchups. Barry Aidan Falker. Aidan Falker had a great game. Mernon had a great game. I'm clutching a straw. I don't know anybody else that you could actually give a 5 or 6 out of 10. And we drew it. So it's a bad billing. And it'd be interesting to hear the lads' thoughts, but I just think it was an extremely poor game. Monaghan done what they had to do and done it very well. A fair play to them. They kept the ball in the need, and the game management was excellent. But I'm beyond this, and that's what I say. I actually think it was the worst defeat of my lifetime, John. That's the truth.
What do we think now with Geezer, Johnny?
Well, look at the decision's up to him. Like, if I have no problem in wanting to stay. I think, airheads can write all the on social media and they can say this and say that, put up posters, and I fight for anyone. I have a lot of time for him. I think he's a good guy. He's someone that I in some capacity for the next foreseeable future. But let's call a spade a spade. We've done absolutely nothing on the range in a lifetime. We can barely win a game at minor or 20s. Like the caliber of the football, and how many excuses are we going to make for these guys? Many excuses are we going to make for them messing up in key times in the Derry game and the Ulster final, in other big games. And there's the other day, the scoring chances were there, and I think the players didn't do themselves any justice, because you just have to look at the performances. So whatever you can blame, maybe the setup, and I know it was me. I would go for the week before. I would have left 2 or 3 up. That's just my own opinion. But whatever I don't know what's going on in training, the same as anybody else, and we don't know what the injury front's like either. So, it's a bit of a weighing scale. But I think when you look at the performance of the players, it was damnable. And like, to be honest, if you're turned off when you play the Dublin or a Kerry like that, there you'd be absolutely railroaded, and rightly so. So I don't think it's on the level, John, to be honest.
Kevy.
Desperately honest from Johnny, and right on the money. Honourable men down the battlefield fighting a war, not with anxiety. Armagh turned up to this game with anxiety. They were conservative. They were everything I didn't want them to be. There's 2 teams you don't get into a dogfight in Ulster with, and that's Derry and Monaghan. And Cork and Armagh done it this weekend. Both of them did. Look, when Aidan Fulker scores more points from play than Rian O'Neill, there's a lot to be said about that. We're just disappointed in the way that Armagh set up. If I was in Geezer's position, I'm not here. He knows a lot more about the game. He's achieved a lot more in the game than I ever have. But I would have gone for their juggler. I would have gone for it. And Johnny hit the nail on the head. When I seen Turbot wasn't starting, I was scratching my head going, this boy's obviously injured. Because the guy's on fire at the minute and he doesn't start. So obviously there's something there behind the scenes. Hopefully we'll come to hear about that. But if he doesn't start for anything other than tactical reasons, then there's going to be a lot of questions asked. Again, Johnny hits the nail on the head over the last couple of games in particular. The forwards have taken wrong options. They've had chances. We think of the Rory Grigum on the second half. That's maybe the difference in Armagh this last couple of years, where they've had the chance to maybe score a goal in Croke Park in a quarter-final, that big strike to get them through to a semi-final. He doesn't take it. He knocks it over the bar. I've spoke about Rory before this, on this podcast before. I'm coached him. I've lots of time and respect. Real lazy tackle on McManus as well towards the end. And they played into Monaghan's hands. There's no doubts about that. And look, before we go on, does McGuinness stay? In my opinion, absolutely. They've maybe stood static a wee bit this year, but let's get real. Who are you going to replace him with? He's on a bit of a project with this team. The age profile is pretty decent in this team. They have a decent system. They've got to the quarterfinals twice. It's about getting over that big hurdle. Yes, this year maybe they lost their Division 1 status. They did get the Ulster final for the first time in a while. So I do think that there is progress being made, but he now needs to make serious, ruthless decisions. He needs to bring in new blood. Can't be relying on rain all the time. Rain this, rain that, rain the other. When I hear Armagh people talking about it, I'm looking up in the sky seeing where the next batch of rain's coming from. They have to have somebody else. It's not all about rain. You have to have 2, 3, 4 guys that are stepping up to the mark, inside Croke Park to get to that bit of a difference. We have that access of Comer and and Waltz last year. You have the Kerry full forward line. You have the Dublin full forward line yesterday. You know, all of you have to have 2, 3, 4, 5 players. So I do think that Armagh would be wise to stay with McGeady, but I'm really, really disappointed in his tactics yesterday. I really thought he would have gone, on Saturday. I thought he would have gone for the juggler, and he didn't. And when you get into a dogfight with Monaghan and you lose, you've only got yourself to blame and the tactics that you use. And I was really, really disappointed in that.
I suppose, Kevin, like throughout the game, like there's Mr. Handy now. Could you understand the quality of it, Kevin? Like it was just typical Ulster football, just so drab and boring.
Yeah, but you can say that, John. That's fine. You don't want to be brought down to Monaghan's level, and this is no disrespect to Monaghan. Monaghan are a very, what I would call, workmanlike team. They drag you down to a certain level. And when you get into a dogfight with them, there's not many teams that win. And when you've got Conor McCarthy, the amount of work that fella went through, Brannigan, the amount of work that fella went through, right? And then you've got Darren Hughes coming on, contributing the way he did with that big catch, fetzing off. When you got McManus coming on in the wise head he is, you've only got yourself to blame. And I'll say this about Cork as well. You don't get into dogfights with teams that know about dogfights. On Armagh, I said to Johnny Offer, Armagh got into a dogfight and he didn't know how to deal with this other team that are used to this all the time. We know one thing about Monaghan. Workmanlike, and their character is unbelievable. We've seen that throughout the league over the last couple of years. And when you're dealing with a team like that, and you go up against that, and you buy into what they want you to buy into, you're only going to be a loser. So I'm not going to say this derogatory to anybody, including Johnny. I'm sort of glad Armagh lost because I wanted them to go out yesterday or on Saturday with a sense of adventure, and they didn't do it. They didn't play to their strengths. They didn't play to their turbits. They didn't even start him. They didn't play to their Rains. They didn't play to their Shuby Campbells. They didn't play to their Rain O'Neills. They have a lot of attacking options, and continuously Armagh want to play conservatively. And I'm glad they lost. Rant over.
I actually had fancied Monaghan last week. I changed my mind 2 or 3 times, and I eventually went back to Armagh for one reason. I watched back Kildare and Monaghan, and I looked at the amount of goal chances Kildare created, and I thought to myself, someday Armagh are going to kick up front. And if Monaghan are as open as that again, Armagh's got a chance. But when you're watching TV, sometimes it's hard to tell, but it just looked as if Armagh was trying to run the ball through the middle early on and just got caught up. And the longer the game went on, I thought, Armagh's not going to get a goal here today. And had Monaghan written all over it at that stage, I felt. And I suppose Conor McCarthy and O'Connell were immense again. And I don't know. I was interested to hear Johnny saying how much of a hurtful defeat it was. It's maybe because I think looking back on it now, the Ulster final was such a missed opportunity, and I felt that Armagh needed silverware. I said that all year. They needed silverware of any description, and I suppose if that ball's worked across to Jarly Oak, it's night Derry and it's gone. And then, interestingly, you were talking about Armagh having an extra man for those 10 minutes like they did against Derry. They didn't capitalise on it at all. And that's even before you go into McManus getting the free at the end and nailing it. But whenever Rain put over that outside of the boot effort, you think to yourself, this is it. This is your chance. So I don't know. You're talking about dogfights, lads. I go back to the time where Kerry played Armagh down in Tralee, was it? And they rolled out the defensive strategy thinking, and everybody was slating them for it. And I remember thinking, these boys are trying to get a dress rehearsal for something for later. So I suppose I do feel McGeady has to stay. People will say he hasn't won anything. But whenever you hear what Johnny's talking about in terms of underage and, what has Armagh won as a county, do you really expect anything more unless your foundations aren't overly strong? So I suppose going into next year, 2 things. You need to find out, you need to be able to compete in dogfights a wee bit more, And longer term, and probably more importantly, I think Armagh need to find some sort of game plan that has Andrew Murnan, that has Conor Turbot, and has Rian O'Neill as an inside trio, whether it's one playing off the other. But all I know is, and I've said it all year, if Andrew Murnan was a Derry man, I would be loving it, because you can play him up front, you can land it to him whatever way you want, you can land kickouts on him at left half forward and right half forward. He's just a magnet for the ball. So long term, Armagh need to get that trio involved with some sort of a game plan, and then come back to my other point, learn how to deal with dogfights. That's two things that you need to be looking at over the winter, and maybe the club championship springs up a couple of extra players that can fit in. So those are the two things that I think we need to look at for me.
Learn how to deal with dogfights is you don't learn how to deal. Sorry, John. Learn how to deal with dogfights is you don't get into a dogfight with someone who knows about a dogfight. You don't bring a knife. I agree, but then you don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
You have to eventually learn. You have to learn how to deal with them, because you're going to need them sometime. But I think if you've got Andrew Murnan in your panel, you need to find a way of using them, because what did Kerry do with Monaghan? Oh my God, Jack threw him at full forward, and he absolutely changed their entire team. Was it 2009? I can't remember the year. But you have to use something like that, and I know the way football is now. It's hard to use people like that because the amount of people are back. But in terms of making progress, I think they have to do something like that. But before I move on from the game, I think it's remiss if we don't talk about Monaghan. Monaghan, Kerry are the only team to be in the top division longer than them. Their minors are in an All-Ireland final, and I've saw them a couple of times, really impressive. And, you can say what you want about Monaghan, about taking them down to their level and all this type of things. If you ask me now as a Derry man, what do I want over the next 10 years? Monaghan. Like, Derry's now in Division 1. If somebody tells me now that we'll be in Division 1 the same length of time as Monaghan, I'll take your arm off. Unbelievable credit where credit's due for me.
Before we go on, Mr. Hanley, it's good to see you.
How you doing, John? How's it going? How are you boys? Sorry, I'm jumping in a bit late. Good to see you all. It's been a few weeks. A lot has happened over the last number of weeks. So I presume you've absolutely torn the arse out of talking about games, but sure, I'll try and add a small contribution. We're gone since we spoke last anyhow, so we're licking our wounds over here in the west. But anyhow,
it's a poor championship without Galway for me.
Yeah. Look, it's
or maybe the Galway we saw last year, maybe Finn.
Yeah. Look, like again, I won't dwell on it because he probably talked it to death. But look, Galway, have only themselves to blame. That's it. Simple as that. We weren't the team, in my eyes. We never were the team that people made us out to be. We were number one contenders for a lot of people, and not many people in Galway saw that, particularly footballing people, which, and it's interesting to hear you talk about Armagh, because Johnny will look at Armagh probably different to what we look at Armagh, and everyone talks about Armagh. I didn't think Armagh were as good as what everyone made them out to be, and I actually fancied Monaghan to beat them, to be honest, because now I know a lot more of the Monaghan players and their characters, and there's good footballers in Monaghan. That's a decent Monaghan team. I know we talk about dogfights and we talk about how their character, but some good players there, lads. Jesus Christ, like some of those boys are serious footballers. Even the older bucks are obviously they're 35, 36, but they're class footballers. But Galway out with a whimper. Injuries killed us again. Same old story. 4 of our top players injured. At the crunch day against Mayo at home, and we didn't set up right. We let Mayo dictate the game, and invariably it cost us. So and we saw what happened to Mayo. So look, we were a good bit off it in the end, but it's for another year. There's 4 teams left now, and looking like same old.
Johnny, your final thoughts on our Monaghan?
Hey.
Yes, Johnny boy.
Yeah, like the boys have summed it up. Listen, I think Monaghan you know, they're battle hardened teams. They've a good setup. They play their strengths. They keep it simple, very, very simple. You know, that's it, John. I don't think they're top 5 in the country. They're done a hell of a job to stay in Division 1 as well as Luja. That's battle hard. That's character. That's they have all them things. But they're building. They're definitely building for something for the future as well. After these, they have a plan. That's very important. They have a plan. Whereas we don't really have much of a plan. They have a good centre of excellence. We have none. You know, so they're a long way further up the road. That department than we are, and their school, the work they do in the schools against promotional officers, and all that sort of thing, is a way ahead of ours. And you can see the results when you have younger players coming through. We're more relying on our clubs to produce players rather than our development squads. You know, so we've a right bit of work to do in that department. But I definitely have to. But I don't think they're gonna be fit to live with Dublin.
John, just one last point on Monaghan. I think it would be remiss of us not to move on and not mention Vinnie Corey and the job he's done.
Yeah.
A lot of people really, there was a lot of talk about this job, who was getting this job, whatever else. Look, talking ignorantly here, I think that Vinnie Corey was probably one of the guys that was on the long odds on this. He eventually got the job. What a job he's done. You know, he's got them in the All-Ireland semi-final. Johnny maybe articulated they're maybe not the top 5 in the country. For me, they certainly are now in the top 4. They've proved that. They've got through what they've needed to get through. So for the job that he's done, fair play to him. You know, he was a warrior as a player, and now he's brought that through. And it looks as if these guys have bought into it. And I think one of the guys said, I think it was Johnny said there, that, look, they have a structure. They're bloody well paying to it, and yes, they'll be up against it next day out, but let's acknowledge the job that Vinnie Corey's done.
And Kevin, let's acknowledge Conor McManus. In fairness, some balls of steel. Yeah,
and look, again, when we come into Croke Park, and I don't know what Johnny or Finian or Matt or Miles viewing this is, you always need a boy with big cojones. Armagh didn't really seem to have one. Yes, Rain had kicked the point at the end, but Rory Grigham, when he got the chance, maybe could have buried that goal. We've seen Walsh and Comer do it for Galway. We've seen the boys in Kerry stand up and Dublin stand up. When it came to the bit, McManus, by Jesus, what a player, and what a great guy as well.
But to be fair, Kerry, Rain had a mediocre game. Rain done the exact same. Rain scored his 2 penalties, done the exact same as McManus, kicked balls from outside 45 over the bar, thought it was a winner. You know,
Johnny, I'm not here to react to you on Rain. I'm not here to badmouth him. I think he's a phenomenally good footballer and phenomenally good talent. What I am here to say is, when the game was in the mountain pot, McManus or Rain, McManus won it. End of story. And he continually does this. Rain, we haven't seen that yet. We will see it. He has the potential to do it. There's no doubts about it. His time will come. But McManus, this time around, wins it.
Oh, McManus is a legend. McManus is the best footballer ever won it. Ever.
Agreed.
Just the final point in Monaghan there. Johnny, you're talking about school structures and underage. Dermot Malone played on a minor team 2007. Derry beat them in the semi-final of Ulster, 1-10 to a point. And Monaghan actually scored the first point that day. But Paul O'Connor was the right-hand man to Bernie Murray as manager. Bernie was the manager. They came back the next year and beat Derry in the semi-final with Kieran Hughes, was unbelievable, and lost to a Tyrone team in the Ulster final. But Paul O'Connor is now back as Malone's wingman with the minors. But from chatting to a Monaghan man over the weekend about the progress they made, he was singing O'Connor's praises. He says the work that man went through was unbelievable. And I think that's that sort of forward planning that Johnny was chatting about there. where even their school teams in Grade C and Grade D in Ulster are in finals and churning out players. And I think it's a case of everybody wants to play for Monaghan because of that year when Malachy O'Rourke was manager of the senior team. And, I suppose when you're chatting about Armagh maybe not delivering it underage, maybe counties just need to take a leaf out of what Monaghan did and weren't prepared to be a small county and says, you know what, we're going to make the most of what we have, and they're doing that. They're minors and all there in final, and seniors in the last four, final point.
Yeah, but just small bit on that point, Mal. They have, like Paul O'Connor, these guys, they have the ability to pick the right man to manage teams, and that is crucial, especially at underage.
Mm-hmm.
Like Paul O'Connor is working on the Malone, and John can tell you this. I've been talking about Malone a long time now, and I can put Malone in the top handful in the country as a manager going forward. He is going to be a very important manager in years to come. He is that good. He is a technician. He is a great way about him. The guys love him. There's nobody say a bad word about him, and he has everything to a T. This man is tops. So they can also put the right people in charge of the right jobs, and that has to test a lot too.
Yeah, perfect stuff. That's perfect stuff. Well wrapped up, and we will move on to the other game that took place on Saturday in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship quarter-final in Park Croke. It was Kerry 2-18, Tyrone 12 points. Tyrone flatter to deceive once again. Mr. Hurley.
Yeah, it was a procession second half. Really, Kerry really turned up and Tyrone didn't. But it was amazing going at half time when we nearly had a brawl at the tunnel with Tyrone. I think it was Kieran McGeary and Conor Moyle. They were getting involved, and we were thinking, here we go, we're going to be in for a very good second half. And Kerry just blitzed them in the second half. Like Dermot O'Connor was outstanding in midfield. Sean O'Shea kicked very well. Clifford kicked along the sideline. I think we've seen it reverberate around social media during the weekend. It was absolutely superb. And brilliant and well thought of Sean O'Shea again. Tony Brosnan did well coming off the bench. Paul Ganey actually had a good game, not shooting wise really, but in fairness, his build-up play was very, very good. Paddy Clifford was good as well. Jason Foley had a stormer of a game at fullback, and he dealt with his Tyrone forwards. I didn't think he would during the week, in fairness, but he did. In fairness to him, Ty Morley had a very good game. Graham O'Sullivan. So the Kerry defenders really shut a lot of people up and produced a very good performance. But of course, there's two sides to every story, and Tyrone, I thought they were shambles in the second half. I don't know what you think, lads. I thought they just lost it. They lost the hit. And Darren McCurry, giving the Kerry player, I think it was Graham O'Sullivan in the second half, that just epitomised Tyrone's attitude on it. I thought from start to finish in that second half, they were shambles. And I don't know where they go from here. I think that's the end for Logan and trying to do in charge. Panavan wasn't in the game. Rory was in the first half at 4 points, but wasn't really into the second half. Maybe he's just a young player and he'll come into it as the years go on. Not played the game as much as in fairness. Darren McCurry didn't play. Conor Moyle didn't have an influence in the game. Paddy Hamsley did well in the first half, but then ran up in the second half in Clifford. And I suppose that's what Clifford could do to a player. But overall, I don't know what the lads think, but I think Sean absolutely fell apart in the second half. And I think that's the end of Logan, Brian Dewar, but Kerry, that was a real statement and they will be a team here in the semi-final.
Just picked up on something Matt you said there, and it was not to bring it back with the Geezer thing. Maybe Matt, I suppose Matt, your opinion on this, but the way Tyrone won the All Ireland back in 2021, and I suppose Geezer's output with Armagh, and I suppose Fergal Logan and Brian Deere time to go. So what would be your thinking on that from the Armagh end of things and Tyrone end of things?
It's honest with you. Like McGeaney, I know he's an excellent coach. He did well with Kildare as well in the early 2000s, but at the same time, how long had Armagh got? And he only got to the quarter final. And bring back to the Armagh game, I don't want to bring back to that game. I just think Monaghan won a better team. They looked primed to win the game. I thought their interceptions, staff especially, was very, very good. And they just wanted more. in Armagh, and maybe that's something for Keys to believe, and equal stuff at the end of the normal time, shouldering everything for Stephen O'Hanlon for Monaghan was just poor form, and maybe that just was the tip of the iceberg. And for Logan and Tuher, last year was very, very poor. They were under a lot of pressure this year to deliver. They just didn't, and the Donegal game maybe kind of showed Kerry was that second half. I don't know what he said to him in the press room, maybe. I was just flabbergasted what happened to Tyrone. I know Kerry were outstanding, and Tyrone just went over to the place. There was no passion or anything. I thought they could flat in their face, to be honest with you, and maybe that's just. Also, I think Tyrone and Jordan Winter will have a change of balance.
Mr. Hanley, David Clifford, he's not bad.
He's saving the game at the minute.
Oh God, he is. God, he is. Well, Johnny Ward from Off the Ball doesn't think so. He thought it was a fluke on Saturday.
Well, no. Look, that piece of play was unbelievable. I suppose they have to reference back to 2000. Paul Clancy's left-footed dinger to Decky Meehan, one of the greatest goals of all time. I saw it on Twitter there. Hadn't seen it in a while. Similar effort. So Clance has been rearing his head this week, saying that his pass was better than Clifford's. But we'll quash that. But look, Clifford. I still think Kerry. Anything happens to Clifford, lads. I don't know. I really don't know. I think Derry are gonna absolutely be well up for this. This is not as. I think the other game is more or less a done deal. That's no disrespect to Monaghan, but I think the Dubs will maul Monaghan at some stage in the game. It might be close for a while, but I think this is a lot closer. Just on the point of Tyrone, and I know you're talking about Tyrone, I do think that management has come to an end. I don't see they're going to improve anymore with the two boys in charge. They've won All Ireland. Like, I used to look at management, and I don't know anything about it, but I used to look at it as, you need to have an upward curve, you know what I mean? And they've peaked and they've come down the hill again. It's time to refresh, because there's some serious footballers. Those two Canavans are serious. The midfield is brilliant. There's a lot to build on there, but it's going to need a fresh voice. I think Kerry played really well. I think, everyone plays well around Clifford when Clifford's on song, and he can bring guys into play. It's like Galway. We rely a lot on Shane Walsh, giving him the ball and for him to run around a lot of players and make things happen. But if Derry can get the numbers back that they will get back and maul and close up the space, I do think that they have a shot. It's not a long shot either. I think they, if they come with that bit of intent and that bit of nastiness, that the Tyrone teams of old had, or whatever it is, then I think they have a serious chance. So I think Tyrone are moving on. Just going back to the Armagh point, Johnny, I'd be interested to get your take on it. But look, Armagh, a lot of good footballers. Geezer, a great guy. Obviously, they love him. They're obsessed with him. He's a hero. He's like there's talk this week in Galway about what's Pádraig Joyce doing. A lot of talk around, will he stay? Will he go? Should he stay? Or should he go? Which is quite unusual. But how do you, as a team, listen to a guy for a 10th year? It's very, very difficult to go into a dressing room and listen to a manager for a 10th year. I don't know. He must be very, very good that he's getting guys still, biting at him and taking every word he says and look at him as God after 10 years. I just find that absolutely remarkable. To think that in GA there's a manager like that without winning, it's phenomenal. I don't think Donaghy will be going up there next year. That round trip is way too long. Is Kieran McKeever the next in charge? I don't know, but it's interesting to state. And I know I've gone off subject there, but I wanted to go back on the Geezer piece. But I think Derry Kerry is closer than people think. Anyhow.
Any thoughts on Finian's point, Johnny?
Yeah, well, he's an absolutely amazing again to chat to. He's so deep. He's a phenomenal man to chat to. I can't rate him highly enough. Like the way Brian Cody is to speak to a team. I've got him speaking to a couple of teams before. It's just phenomenal. It is phenomenal. I can't talk to Slacker. But you missed my concept with the caliber of footballer we're struggling with. And
agreed.
I think the only thing I fear for here, and like I said, I think the world of him, and I wouldn't mind him staying on, but I just think that from his point of view, what more can he do with that group? Like, it's, there's only so many kicks in the stones he can take as well. Like, he can't even get a wee bit of luck to get over the line in one penalty shootout out of 4. It must be demoralising as well. Like, it's it's shocking. So listen, I'm not going to go on with John. Just want to get on the pod. But
yeah, no, and look, I played under Geezer in international rules in 2011, and just to your point there, he's an absolute unbelievable guy to bring. Kind of what Sean Boylan was in a different kind of way, but to bring a different word or a different story every time. Nothing is the same. And I suppose when I'm saying now, how do people listen to him for 9 years? I actually kind of know that every time he comes into a dressing room, he's got a different way of delivering the message or a different message, which is phenomenal for a manager to be able to do that, or a boss at work or whatever, because it just keeps you on your toes all the time. And every time you go in, you're going, what the fuck is he going to say now? Do you know what I mean? And I'm going to be up for it. I remember lads going out at half time in an international whatever match, and like we were just, he brings everyone in around the circle. I see him do it for our man. You're just ready to bite anything or do anything for the guy. So he does have that ability. So maybe that's what's keeping him. Yeah. Sorry to go on, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, your thoughts, Kerry Tyrone?
Yeah, just a couple of points on that, if I may pick up on Finian's point just for a second.
Let your Kerry bias now. Leave it to one side. It's you head now, right? Head it, not.
No, just on Geezer. I mean, I would know him from my time at Queen's. He's a phenomenal motivated guy. This guy, if he's involved in Dublin, there's no doubt he's a winner. He deals with high-level athletes. He brings people on. There's no doubt, psychological wise, you want to play for him. You want to buy into him. It was like us at Queen's with James McCartan. We just wanted to play for the guy. There's something special about him. There's no doubts about that. I was a wee bit disappointed the way he got involved with a few Monaghan players towards the end. He done this with Antrim, actually, when we ourselves and Kildare drew that day. And I remember we were going into extra time, and him and Baker had a bit of a head-to-head, and it really motivated me the way, like, he was very aggressive towards Baker that day, and it really motivated me. He wound me up a wee bit that day, if I'm honest with you. He got involved with the Monaghan players towards the end of the game. I don't know if I think the camera focused on the referee, and then he was giving a bit of mouth to the Monaghan players as well. So sometimes it's hard to detach yourself from the game. I agree with the guys. He's a phenomenal motivator, but I still personally do think that for Armagh to compete on the level that they are, that it's imperative that they keep him for at least one more year, if not 2. Now, he may step back a wee bit and go into a director of football role, I don't know, but they need to keep him involved for Armagh to keep at that high level. Personally, he's probably the biggest asset that they have at the minute, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on, Kerry Tyrone, again, I said at the top of the show, we can summarise this match in 10 minutes after half-time. By God, I wish Pablo Picasso was still alive to paint that picture of David Clifford's overhead pass. It was just a thing of beauty. It was unbelievable. It should be hung in the Irish Art Museum. It was just class. It just unlocked that defence. The first half was so lethargic in certain ways. Yes, let's give credit. Paul Geaney stood up, one of the older statesmen. There was a lot of focus on Clifford this week, obviously. Maybe Sean O'Shea. Kerry coming into the game had been very lethargic. That's the best way to put it throughout the championship. But when the questions were asked about them, and look, I've no problem in saying, I tipped Tyrone this last week on this show, how wrong I was. And I'm happy to say that. The way that Kerry played, the way that Dermot O'Connor took the first goal, so smooth, in the way that he scored. The second goal, the way that Tony Brosnan sucks into the 2 defenders, the pass across, the way that Sean O'Shea, Lies McKinnon and Burns on the ground and just passes it into the net. In the one hand, Kerry were really, really good. On the other hand, question has to be asked, is this an end of an era in Tyrone? Certainly, I think this is the end of this management team. I'd agree with Finian on that. I think it's time for a change. I think the guys No shame in it at all. You know, they've won in All Ireland. The last 2 years has been rather. It's been, if you put a graph up, you know, they peaked 2 years ago. It's been all downhill since then. A lot of guys. Petey Hart once or twice in the second half. The legs were gone. Is it time for him? Is it time for Matty Donnelly? It's only up to them. They've been great servants, great footballers, but realistically, are we seeing the end of that? Paddy Hampshire cleaned out, absolutely cleaned out. So there's a lot of decisions to be made in Tyrone. Look, Tyrone will always have good youth coming through. It's maybe who they go for now. And my big issue with Tyrone after this game is, I said to you at the start of the year, I continued on that they were dysfunctional and maybe thought in a one-off game they could beat Kerry, but dysfunctional Tyrone turned up. They need a change of management now, in my opinion, and they got to get their skates on, because there's one guy. Everybody wants that one guy, Donegal, after him. Who knows who else is that? That's him. Yeah. So it's time that they got their skates on. I think he's the right man for the job. As I say, they've great talent coming through. We've seen the two Canavans, really only Dara's got a real run this year. Rory's come in his first year, started to get a real run in the last 2-3 games. Young McGleenan's coming through. They've brought one or two others through this year. So, I mean, it's time now really that I think that they'll change the management, but I think they're going to have a period of 2-3 years. They really underperformed, but I suppose we could see this coming from 2-3 weeks back. I did mention to you that I thought the game against Donegal masqueraded the fact of where Tyrone were at. It was a dysfunctional Donegal team as well. Just on another point with Kerry, defensively, I thought they were much better this time around. Against the potent forward line, I mean, Graham O'Sullivan was good, Foley was good. Their defence this year thus far has been poor, so I agree with Matt on that point. You know, real positive coming out of this game for them. And going into the Derry game, look, I understand what Finian's saying, but if Derry play the same tactics as they do, and Mal might disagree with me, I think they'll whop Derry. Derry showed themselves up last year against Galway. In terms of stuck with them for half an hour, and then Galway really opened up, started second half. I can see Kerry doing that again. Derry might have to play a much more expansive game. But really great to see Kerry pull out. This is their best performances. It's their only performance of the year to stay in Division 1. And they've been really rank compared to what they were, 12 months ago, defensively and offensively. So we've nearly seen their best performance, both offensively and defensively, for the last 12 months in Croke Park on Saturday evening. As for Tyrone, I think it's time for a change, and hopefully over the next couple of years they can rebuild and come back into that top 4 or 5.
Yeah, perfect, Kevin, perfect. And we'll move on to yesterday's action in Croke Park. It was in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship quarter-final. It was Dublin 2-17, Mayo 11 points. Very, very, very underwhelming, Mr. McMullen.
Yeah, I was really disappointed, to be honest. It was the game I looked forward to all week. Whenever I heard that it was the game on after Derry's game, I was just looking forward to being there in a packed house in a game that was bouncing to the very end, and it wasn't. It just wasn't. I did expect Dublin to win, but there's a couple of, like Kevy's chatting about Clifford's unbelievable pass, lighting up a game. Mayo seem to be flat. They seem to have moved away from that thing of Conor Loftus playing at centre back as an experiment. Then all of a sudden he doesn't even get out over the sideline. So that's a tactical thing that none of us here really knows anything about. But when you think I think it was Dublin's second goal where they got it out of Monaghan. Mannion's unbelievable wee chip lift, and Basquel come just to palm it into the net, versus the sort of half chance that Mayo had. They butchered it, and Owen McLaughlin sort of pulled on it and hit the post. And in those two plays, it probably sums up the reason why Mayo are still searching for Sam, because no matter what happens, it still comes back to the same old, is the cut and thrust of winning matches. And Ryan O'Donoghue was completely on fire in the first half. Like, he couldn't be looked at. Could do nothing with him. And I don't think he scored in the second half. And between that and, as I say, that goal versus Mayo's butcher chance summed him up. But back to the point, whenever we were talking about Team of the Week, James McCarthy, he came out after half-time. I would actually love to hear Dublin's half-time team doc. We never will, but like even the manner of McCarthy's run after half-time, down into the hill, and you're up and you just see the blue tins behind the goals, and there's an energy. And it nearly was like a signal of intent, like, we're here. So you just assume there was some sort of a team talk, like, lads, just get out there and let's go at this. And McCarthy was amazing. Like, he was involved in everything. And then those two, you got to take your chances. And I think Pascal, for all the chopping and changing that Dessie Farrell did all year, I think he's the only player that played every single game for Dublin. And I suppose it's no coincidence that he bagged, was it 2-2 or 2-3 in a man of the match performance. And to sum up, I think the worrying thing for the other teams in the All-Ireland series is every time the fourth officials board went up for substitution, they're bringing on players that maybe aren't going to last 70 minutes, but they're bringing on a player that the opposition is going to respect enough to worry about, and they'll either get a score or they'll drag a defender out of position so somebody else scores, and they've maybe put down a bit of a statement. But for winning the league, I did fancy Dublin to win, but the thing that I can't get out of my head was that outside of Killian McDaid and Sean Kelly on one leg, who was absolutely unbelievable for a man who probably shouldn't have been playing, outside of those two players, I think it was Matty Tierney had the goal chance that Kelly made. I think it was him who was saved by Reap's foot. If that goes in, Galway would have been in Croke Park. So you can't turn it on like a tap to eventually turn up in Croke Park and from a very understrength Galway team, underperforming Galway team, to nearly beat them. And then it maybe goes back to that point that only Mayo people or people in the setup, or as Johnny said, good football people in the county will know. How do you go from playing a footballer at centre back and an experiment, then when it comes to the crunch, you go away from it? So you're wondering, was there a panic somewhere in the tactical side of things? It's always loose to talk about things like these in podcasts when you don't really know what's going on. But I thought that was a wee bit of a concern for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know the clock's kind of against us here, lads, so we'll crack into the other game in Croke Park. It was Derry 1-12, Cork 1-8. Mr. Hurley, disappointed leaving Croker. What a great year for Cork.
Yeah, disappointing day, but sometimes you just have to hold your hands up and speak by the better team. Cork are Derry are Division 1 bound, and they're top level team in the country, and you just have to accept that, and Cork need to get up to that level. But I think we competed well enough in the first half, but it was just a few small things. First of all, our shooting was way off in the first half. Overall, we had a 68% shot accuracy, and that isn't good enough to beat a good team like Derry. And what a pinpoint it was, from the throw up in the first half, we kept the ball for 3 minutes, and then Stephen Sherlock wide. And unfortunately, that just set the whole tone for the game. And Derry controlled the first half really well. They went 6 points to 2-8. And we're thinking, okay, we're going to get a bit of a pummeling here. Derry taking the scores at ease. But then we read off the last 3 points of the first half and think, okay, we could be on a repeat. But I think Derry managed the second half brilliantly, John. We have to be honest. Brendan Rodgers, Conor Glass, is just a voice. Unbelievable player. Ethan Doherty played well. McGuigan didn't have his best game either for Derry, and they still came out on top. And I suppose when Maguire got that goal, there was hope in the Cork fans. The Rebels chant went over Croke Park. Then Conor Doherty scores that goal, and game over. But look, Cork had a good year. We have to learn from this, and we have to get promoted to Division 1 next year. That's the key for Cork. And fix up on the shooting as well. As what I will say about John Cleary's team selections. I would love this year to have Stephen Sherlock and Kerry in the same team. I know they're similar players, but they're two outstanding forwards. We need to have them in the same team. Conor Cormack is the same. There's a live word. He didn't get the chance now yesterday. The test at Derry defence, but he has a trick in him. He will do well in Cork in the next years. There is still players to come back. Colin Manning has been in all year. Once he comes back into the team, me as well. Liam O'Donovan. So there is players to come back for Cork, and I am hoping for the future. But the key thing is now, from a Cork point of view, is to go up to Division 1 next season to compete with the big enough teams and ultimately improve Cork. And I think John Cleary's teams are on a journey now. And one thing about Cork as well, we only lost beat this year by 4 points to beat Derry. So that's positive. It is positive for Cork this season. We haven't been home. We haven't been out of play. We deserve to be in Croke Park on this. Ultimately, we just come up against a better team, Derry, and I don't know what Mal thinks, but I think Derry could put up to Kerry. I think they're going along really quietly. They're keeping in the long grass. They're keeping the long grass. They're really forward to Shane Wigan. They have good counter-attacking players. They attack as a unit. Lynch shooting as well yesterday. They're brilliant. So, yeah. To do to improve against Kerry, I think they would be Kerry on their day. They're a formidable team, but for Cork, year over.
Before I ask Mal, Finn, I'd say you love this game.
Oh Jesus, I loved it. Country practice was on. I was watching that instead. Yeah, it was abysmal. It was the most abysmal game of football I've seen in a long time. But anyhow, look, that's neither here nor there. Like, look, in fairness to Cork, and I suppose I said this before, Kevin is down there now. Year one is never about winning All Irelands or shooting the lights out or doing both. He has to do one thing first, sort out the defence in Cork, and he's done a pretty good job at that. It's going to take longer than a year to get both right. So next year will be all about transition quicker and getting your shooters on, as Matt says, all that sort of stuff, getting the right players on the pitch, maybe some more attackers. But, you know, they were competitive this year in a lot of games, and that's good from a Cork point of view. If you're going to the game, at least you know what you're getting. It's not Jekyll and Hyde, and he did the same in Galway. It wasn't the prettiest early doors, but it turned into a more transitional game with, faster players, more forwards as the years went on. So I think Kevin will instill that, and if John Cleary keeps him on and lets him get at that. I think Derry have tipped into this All-Ireland semi-final under the radar. It's very strange with Derry. They've had it's been a tough year for them so far with all that's gone on, and they took a bit of a clipping in the league final, but they haven't really been troubled in the championship overly yet, as in they've just tipped on. The last day Cork were in the game, but they were never under too much pressure. And now all of a sudden they're in the semi-final. And in my eyes, they've got the better draw. That might sound weird. I've tipped, I thought Dublin were going to win this All Ireland from way back. But in my eyes, they've got a better draw, and I think Kerry aren't reaching the heights yet that can convince me that they're going to hammer Derry by any means. And I think if Derry get the bit between their teeth, they can trouble anyone. They're very difficult to play against, and no matter where it is, whatever about going the other end and scoring, they'll frustrate the life out of you because they're very good defensively. And in fairness to Rory Gallagher, when he was there, and the guys that have taken over, they're really, really good at setting up in that defensive arc.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So they are very good at that. So look, I give them a right good chance. Look, the weekend wasn't entertaining, but they're not in the business of that. Their business is getting to an All-Ireland final, and I give them a right good chance.
Yeah, interesting to hear Johnny's view. And Johnny, you haven't spoken in a while, so what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, the big thing, and it'd be interesting on Mal on this, is probably going to the Kerry thing, Kerry, and Derry has a very small panel. They don't use a lot of players, and Mal will tell you that. And that's what I'd be afraid of, that they haven't really been tested yet. Armagh, and we've seen what we got how far away I think we are from that. So I think Derry's going to need Aberdeen to go right for them. They're going to need their matchups absolutely to a T. And they're going to need a disgrace of luck to get over the line, I think, against Kerry. I don't think it'll be a hammering match, but I think it'll be comfortable for Kerry. Like, the Kerry defence was phenomenal. Paddy Tally had them set up their team. I knew he'd have a plan. The amount of guys, I tell you, a guy that flew onto the radar that you've never mentioned there, I thought he had a phenomenal game, was Spillane. The work rate of Spillane, turning over ball, parrying, sprinting back, even chipping in with the scores. He busted himself because he wants the jersey next day, and that's what you have. You have competition. Back to the game. It was very cool. But Cork, I agree with that opinion, saying that Cork's building something for the future. They're getting a style of play. First of all, they're closing the back door and making things tight. I think Walsh is phenomenal. He's an unbelievable coach, and I think they've done excellent considering they're completely written off at the start of the year. So I was very impressed with Cork throughout the year. Okay, the game was poor the weekend, and you could have fell asleep and you'd be forgiven for falling asleep in the middle of it. But look, Derry went about their business, as they need to do, and they were comprehensive win. But there's all sorts of challenges down the line, and Derry haven't been tested yet, so it's going to be interesting to see what they bring to the semi-final, John.
Well said, Johnny. Last word, man. What are we thinking?
Yeah, it was a poor game. There's no doubt about that. The other thing I would like to say is I thought Cork were completely disrespected going into the game, and that wasn't me trying to be cute. When you beat Division 1 teams, you deserve a bit of respect, and I felt they didn't get that. On the game itself, Matthew saying there about just how much control Cork had early on without getting anything out of it. At 4 wides, Derry went 6-3 up, controlled the game. Sean Powder, Conor McCluskey won the battle. Powder was taken off. Rogers won the battle with Ian Maguire. Matty Taylor was a player I worried about. Paul Cassidy won that battle, kicked 2 points. Between Stephen Sherlock and Brian Hurley, Chrissy McCaig had that tied up. And I think what I sort of worried about Cork lads was that they had a lot of scorers, but by the time McSweeney came on and Chris Jones came on, they needed to come on to a game when it was a 1-point game. And by that stage, it was sort of gone. And then, as you said, Johnny, how quickly Monaghan replied to Rian O'Neill's point. It was the same with Conor Doherty's goal. So all those things went in Derry's favour because they got their matchups right. And that's where the game was won. But it was a very low-key game in every way. Even Derry's, I'll not use the word celebration, but even Derry's body language after it. But the Kerry's a different animal completely. They're all Ireland champions, but it'll come down to the matchup thing. It definitely will. I hope that there's more in Derry, and you like to think that Kerry maybe won't be as ruthless as they were against Tyrone. But the scary thing is that David Clifford wasn't unbelievable. He's still, when you compare last year's All-Ireland final performance, so there's that there to contend with. But I think, as Donegal found out in 2014 with Kerry, that you have to, when you're getting your matchups right, you have to match up absolutely everybody. It was Donaghy and, he was the focus, the goods, but then all of a sudden Paul Geaney is caught one-on-one with Paddy McGrath with a mismatch in height, balls in the back of net, and it's catch-up. So when you're going down the route of a game plan, like Derry's game plan revolves around a couple of things. Obviously, staying ahead, matchups been 100% right, and high energy. So all those things have to be right, and you're playing against an unbelievable team. But from that point of view, Derry have got the guts of 10 days to get that right. But as a Derry man, you're just so happy to have a bit of continuity, and back-to-back Ulster titles, and to be in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 teams in Ireland. And back to the point I made against against the Monaghan game. Like, Derry have been in 7 out of the last 9 minor finals in Ulster. That doesn't win you Sam Maguire's, but that's that foundation that, you know, has made what Derry are doing right now. Long term, do what Monaghan do. Stay there for a decade. And then the thing that every team in Ireland wants to do is find scoring forwards and find a wee bit more variation. Like, Derry had, I think they had 25 fit players at the weekend. You know, I think Dermot Baker might have been carrying an injury. So they're very, very limited. But they seem to thrive in the tight-knit thing. But long term, when you're trying to win the big prizes, I think that's where Derry need to go. There seems to be a thing out there where they're not really calling on experienced players back onto the panel. The only thing they're going to seem to add to the panel with is young boys coming off the minor team. So that takes time. But thank God we've got a wee bit of a foundation now. And God, would it be great if we get a cut at Kerry? So we'll just have to get the rosary beads out and hope things can work out. But things are in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, the very best luck with the semi-final. Really looking forward to the next few weeks ahead, lads. It's nearly coming to an end. I suppose we wrap up with Mr. Hanley, your moment of the weekend and player of the weekend.
Oh, my moment of the weekend was Darren Hughes' catch. I know that might sound a bit crazy, but what a catch.
Yeah.
What a fella. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and just on the Monaghan Armagh thing, I know, like, you know, a couple of those guys, the Hugheses, Darren and Mandy and the boys, like, their character is unbelievable, you know, and they'll bring lads with them. And when he came on, that's not an easy catch. That ball was flaked at him.
Mm-hmm.
So that was definitely my moment. My player of the weekend, I suppose, Collie Pascal, really, yeah. Look, he's been knocking around for a while. A lot of questions have been asked to that guy, himself and his brother. They've been pretenders for a few years now. I saw something today that, you know, they missed in 21 against Mayo to win that game. And back this year, he's surely in all-star form, I'd say. He's very close to it anyhow. So, massive performance, scored 2-3 in an All-Ireland quarter-final, and it's funny that he's the guy that's driving the bus now, and the Kilkennys and the boys are on the bench.
Johnny Martley.
Yeah, well, that'd be my man as well now. I have to agree with Finian. I've told Pascal now, even on the message board there with ourselves, and we've one punter who will not say who he is, didn't rate him, but
I think, is that punted after leaving the call here?
Yeah, but look at, I think he's class, and he just didn't get the chance. You know, and I said this a few weeks ago. I know we're loud and whatever, but the ruthless streak I seen in him a few weeks ago again, Loud, he wasn't just happy taking a point. He wanted to rip the goals out of it. And this is the difference when you get to the top level. They do need players like that. And Clifford's like that. Sean O'Shea and these guys are like that. If they get a sniff, they will sicken you. They will put the boot on top of your throat and they will put you into the ground. And that's what I love to see from a player. And Pascal, he was demanding that jersey. There's some competition in Dublin for jersey. He wanted to hold on to his jersey, and he made sure he did. And guess what? The weekend again, he made sure he has his jersey. Absolutely phenomenal. The moment for me the weekend, and it's probably going on with the radar, not just the player, but the referee in the Kerry game, I thought was absolutely excellent. Excellent.
I thought you were going to say something else.
Huh?
I thought you were going to insult him.
No, I thought it was absolutely excellent. And it's a pity we couldn't have him refereeing the rest of the games for the rest of the championship, because no harm to cover the other games. It was very mediocre refereeing going on, very inconsistent, and it's so difficult for the players. Now, don't get me wrong. I think they've too many rules in it now, which isn't helping the referees either. They need to simplify it, but it's unbelievable for a player, the inconsistencies. And I thought Brendan, whatever you call him, I thought he was excellent. Yeah,
Brendan Colley.
Absolutely excellent. I thought he was excellent.
Absolutely, Mr. McMullen.
Yeah, moment of the game was Clifford's over-the-top pass. How accurate he meant it to be is irrelevant, but he meant to play it to a Kerry man, and you just love to see those moments. Player of the week, probably going to stay with James McCarthy. Pascal was deadly, and it's actually very refreshing to hear a story of a man who was way down the pecking order come back. But I'm going back to McCarthy and that run after half time that seemed to absolutely drive the Dubs on. And another point I want to make is the penalty situation. Penalty shootouts are here to stay. I think replays, there's no room for them. So there's hardly room for the games that we do have without replays. But for that to happen to Callum Comiskey, I don't know the man personally. Johnny, you'll obviously know him, but for somebody to have to hit a penalty twice in a penalty shootout, it's just a disgrace. If you go to soccer and the 11th person takes a penalty, then you keep going. That's fair enough. But for somebody to have to step up twice, maybe 3 times in a penalty shootout, it's just wrong. There's no other way of saying it. And you just hope that it actually happened to Ryan Connolly in the Ulster Club Junior final for Drumlane.
Yeah.
It's happened to Johnny Murda, or it's not Johnny Murda, it's happened to Callum Comiskey. And Johnny, if you know,
it wouldn't happen to Johnny.
you just hope that those boys can bounce back from that. But that rule has to change. That's just wrong in every way.
Especially, I just want to, as quick comment on that, especially for, they're not professional athletes.
No.
It's completely wrong, but look, it's not surprising. The guys that sit at these top tables thinking of these.
Who in their right mind thought of that? It's absolutely ridiculous. Why wouldn't you put the 15 players that are on the pitch, arms around each other like they do in other sports, and then the 5 lads come up, and then 6, then 7, then 8? That's just common.
Yeah, and list your first 5, Finn. Make sure you know who the first 5 are.
100%.
Yeah.
Nonsense. And the poor guy, you know what I mean? That's just obscene. That's really making a mock. And you know what? The GA are half afraid of what might happen if you put 15 lads up there more than the penalties. It's just pure. They're so disjointed and unorganised. Sorry for butting in, but that's a pod in itself.
The other thing is, after what happened between Galway and Armagh last year, and Derry Miners in Dublin last weekend, to have 2 teams going down the tunnel at the same time is just ludicrous.
Madness.
Kerry and Tyrone, they've got huge rivalry. They're proud counties, and it's a massive game. And you're going down the tunnel at the same time with high emotion after playing well or playing poorly or whatever, or your man taking you for a couple of points. It just shouldn't happen. It's ludicrous. Something has to change.
What's that, Mal? Master the small things and you'll be able to master the big things. You're yet to be able to achieve that. Mr. Hurley, wise man, last words of you.
Yeah, I suppose player of the week, I'd probably go with Dermot O'Connor from Kerry. I think Jacob Foley was close as well. His turnovers were insane against Tyrone, but Dermot O'Connor, that goal against Tyrone was absolutely superb. And the moment of the week, probably McManus' point against Armagh, the late free to equalise it. I just think the age of him, 36 years of age, and still to have the cojones just to get that point at the end. And before we leave the podcast, I just wanted to touch on Johnny's point about Brendan Cawley, the referee. I think he just deserves the All-Ireland final now. I'll go as far as that. I think he's been the most consistent referee this year. And I hope the GA don't be doing tokenism or stuff like that to give David Goff the refereeing job in the final. Please don't. Or don't give it to or anybody else like that. Brendan Cawley genuinely deserves to referee the All-Ireland final. So let him. He lets the game flow. He calls it what it is. I think he's an excellent referee, and he's stern. He will, calm down the players. I think he's an excellent referee.
Here, excellent point.
Yeah, I was going to ask Kev, Johnny Butcher. He's left us.
He doesn't like referees. We're talking about them.
Yeah, he's had enough. Kerry, if you're out there somewhere, thanks a million for joining us. I don't know where you're going, what you're up to. The night's young, says you, so I don't know where that man's going to end up tonight. Johnny, where do you think?
He's away to get a new phone.
What do you think, Finn? Where's Kevin going to head off to?
God only knows. We'll see a picture on Twitter anyhow of some watering hole in back into Scotland later on, so we'll check in with him then.
Johnny Murray.
A place called Legs and Co.
Brilliant stuff, lads. Brilliant stuff. Great little stuff, lads. Great stuff. Lads, thanks a million for joining me this week. And of course, the podcast brought to you by yourgrich.com. Use the code JMAC Podcast to get 15% off on the website. Finian Hanley, Johnny Murta, Mike McMullen, Matthew Hurley, and Kevin McGarty. You're right there somewhere. Thanks a million for joining me. Lads, have a great week. Thank you.
Cheerio.
Cheerio, boys.
Thanks, lad.